In this video, I will be looking at the Conservapedia article titled Counterexamples to an Old Earth. So, as you can see, it claims to have 65 counterexamples. And it says that much additional scientific evidence points to a young age of the Earth and the universe, and the Biblical Creation Organization Creation Ministries International published articles entitled 101 Evidences for a Young Age of the Earth and the Universe and How Old is the Earth. Tell me if you want to react to those articles as well. So, anyway, and it also associates Old Earth with anti-Christian conspiracy. So I will keep track of any, alleged counterexamples that I myself can directly refute. And it says, the oldest direct evidence of life, written documents, clothing, remnants of civilizations, tree rings, etc., is no older than about 3000 BC and certainly younger than 4000 BC. First of all, that is not true. First of all, the examples it lists for the oldest direct evidence of life, that is just not true. Fossils are direct evidence of life. Footprints are direct evidence of life. And I know Conservapedia wants to say that all those fossils are from between 2400 and 2300 BC, and I won't get into, but whatever. And also, the linked article doesn't claim that. It says it's talking about a sword. It's actually talking about swordsmen. So this specific find it cites us does not even. So this specific from CF News does not tell us when life began, or when the Earth, how old the Earth was, or even how old human life is. All this tells us is relatively when humans started making swords. All this tells us is that humans started making swords about 5,000 years ago. The approximate date of the origin of Earth based on a straightforward reading of the Bible. Well, what does it mean by straightforward reading? Because the Bible never actually claims that the Earth is that age. So I'll put one tally mark for refuting that. Well, adherence to an older, these people come to their conclusions due to their presuppositions, and that positions, i.e. the lens through that they see the world, that evolution is true, that the Earth is old, and that humans were originally dumb and became more intelligent that life went on. And by the way, young Earth creationists admit that their presuppositions drive their conclusions. That, I think Ken Ham is like what he refers to as a biblical worldview, as kind of like glasses through which the evidence is interpreted. And this image caption right here is not listed as one of the counterexamples as I've seen so far, but I'll address it. Although frequently cited by revised and well-supported Egyptian chronology, actually provides strong evidence in favor of a young Earth. That statement doesn't make any sense. Even if the revised chronologies were true, that would only tell us when Egyptian civilization began. It wouldn't prove that the Earth is only like 6,000 years old or whatever. Next one. Over 270 cultures have flood legends that distinctly resemble the biblical flood account. Well, what do you mean by resemble? Or like they... We need... how should I say this? We need the specific details and the degree to which those details correspond. Well, critics like to say the biblical flood account is derived from other stories. Yeah, and there's really good evidence against that. But I don't have time to get into that in this video. In reality, is the other way around. The biblical account is far superior to any flood legend in multiple ways. First of all, this idea, I think it's talking about some sort of literary quality, and that does not prove the origin of this story. It's not like whatever is the best piece of literature is the original version and all worse versions copied it. No, that's not how it goes. Creation legends also exist, but once again, the biblical account is superior. And its site is Answers in Genesis. Ooh, Troy Lacey, is that also the person who wrote that really bad Answers in Genesis article on the Mernep to steal, which I plan on reviewing? And another article from Answers in Genesis. How many of these are Answers in Genesis? That one. But although I do believe that archaeology does support biblical history, it's just citing Answers in Genesis sounds like confirmation bias on Conservapedia's part. And also the fact that there are flood legends that could tell us that there was an actual flood, but it does not mean that the Earth is only 6,000 years old. So far that's 2 tally marks because I've refuted 2 of their supposed counterexamples. Noah, his sons, and his further descendants mentioned in the Bible are found and named in numerous cultures, and there is much as... So this is that... There are royal genealogies in Europe that trace their family lines back to Noah. Of course they would. Keep in mind that European monarchy post 380 has always been very Christian. And also, even if it was true that Noah and his family are the answers, that wouldn't prove a young Earth. So that's the ancient cultures all over the world built ziggurat-like structures. There's strong evidence that they originated from one area in the Tower of Babel, which is a real ziggurat-shaped tower. Oh. So these two points say the same answers in Genesis article. So again, this idea of a ziggurat and that the Tower of Babel actually existed, that would not prove a young Earth. That is not evidence for a young Earth. That's unrelated. The idea of the Tower of Babel, of there being a historical Tower of Babel, is completely unrelated to the age of the Earth. In fact, I think Inspiring Philosophy has a video in which he dates the Tower of Babel to before these Conservapedia people date the flood to. Next, number 5. In history, the closer one gets to Babel, geographically speaking, the earlier the civilizations in that area first developed, giving strong evidence that all these civilizations were originally from Babel and their dispersion all over the earth. So finally, a citation that isn't from Answers in Genesis. Even secular historians accept that, and call Sumer the cradle of civilization. Well, I think the term cradle of civilization is not that, because I think the official narrative is that the Indus River civilization, the Yellow River civilization, the Nile River civilization, and Mesopotamia all developed independently of each other. And keep in mind that Chinese civilization goes back to before 1600 BC. I think officially the Xia dynasty is said to have started in 2070 BC. And also this wouldn't move in a young Earth. The Sumerian kings list is remarkably similar to the genealogy in Genesis 5. Conservapedia does note that the Sumerian kings list has times that add up to more than 200,000. In total, it adds up to more than 200,000 years, right? There is a very close correlation between the two lists. If one excludes Adam and Noah in the Bible, the flood is mentioned, and the kings all have long lifespans, providing strong evidence that the Sumerians recognize the history recorded in the Bible as fact. Well, it could mean that it could be evidence that they both had a similar cultural idea of these ancient people lived for a very long time, but that wouldn't prove a young Earth. In fact, several of these Sumerian kings actually reigned for longer than the supposed young Earth that Conservapedia wants to tell us about. While many evolutionists point to Egyptian history, which according to them dates back long before the biblical creation and flood dates as proof against the young Earth, a growing number of academics are recognizing that many of the traditional sources of Egyptian history are both inaccurate and misinterpreted. And revised dates align remarkably well with biblical history. Addition and radiocarbon dating has given additional evidence that the Egyptian more than recently start Answers research journal that's run by Answers in Genesis. So again, Answers in Genesis is not that good for Egyptian theory. I think it once claimed that Tutmosis III, who reigned in 1479 to 1425 BC, 1479 to 1427 BC, was the Shishak of the Bible, who was reigning in the late 10th century BC. So yeah, Answers in Genesis, not great for Egyptian history. Or even ancient Near Eastern geography, as you'll see when I do my video on the Rosetta Stele. And also this wouldn't prove that the Earth is only 6,000 years old. Because of the world in 18, that's also Answers in Genesis. Let's just go back to number 1 and see if that's also Answers in Genesis. And no, that's probably just Age of the Earth by Conservapedia. And this is good. But Conservapedia is like systemically slow to load. Okay, that's... No, so these two are from CMI, and this one is from an actual site, but Conservapedia misinterprets it. Now, where am I? Many evolutionists believe that ancient man was not as intelligent as today and did not possess superior technology. Many archaeological findings in numerous ancient civilizations have proven otherwise, that ancient man was very intelligent, possibly even more so than modern-day society, as well as more technologically advanced in some ways. So this is Answers in Genesis, and it's an article personally written by Ken Ham. This is Green Forest, Arkansas. And that's also Green Forest, Arkansas. Both of these books are Don Landis, who I don't know about. And also, that wouldn't prove that the Earth is young. That wouldn't prove an only 6,000 years. Many different cultures thought that history that have legends and realistic accounts from historians of dragons. This is very strong evidence that dinosaurs were still alive and a very real part of ancient culture, and even some more recent ones, informing a young Earth in the biblical account of origins. In fact, there are some reports of dinosaurs living in the remote jungles of Africa today. That's probably referring to the a certain cryptid that's supposedly in the Congo. It hasn't really been confirmed, and also this is Answers in Genesis, and so is this one and that one. And keep in mind, I'm not hating on Answers in Genesis. I'm subscribed to them on YouTube and follow them on Instagram. So, again, even if dinosaurs coexisted with man, that would not prove that the Earth is only 6,000 years old, or that dinosaurs and man were both created within the same literal 24-hour time period. So Conservapedia's arguments, none of them, they're all basically non sequiturs so far. There's a striking similarity in the very diverse worldwide cultures see constellations and it's going to probably suggest that there's just one interpretation of constellations and one set of constellations that they had at Babel, and then after dispersion, each of them came back went their own separate ways, that with that one shared knowledge, and over time they had their own unique interpretations of that. Oh wait, it actually does mention Babel explicitly. Very diverse cultures, the constellations that people see are the same, and the meanings of many are the same, including the Big and Little Dipper, showing that people had to develop them together rather than on opposite ends of the globe. And 24 is from Answers in Genesis, 25 is from CMI. Academics, including secular ones, have been able to track through the precession of the Earth when the constellations were developed by man. Dates, roughly speaking, between 2800 and 2100 BC, right in line with the dispersion of the date of the dispersion at Babel. Although, additionally, it has been found that the latitude of where the developers of the constellations were was, roughly speaking, between 30 and 2 degrees latitude, again in line with the locations of Ararat and Babel. So there's one single hearth for our knowledge about constellations. I don't know whether that's true, but even if it was, it would not prove a young Earth. It would not prove that the physical planet was only 6,000 years old. And I'm currently looking at my map. By the way, did you know that almost the entire continental US is also between 30 and 42 degrees north latitude? as is Saudi Arabia, and Mauritania, and Mexico. Wait, am I looking at the right place? So yeah, the entire US, Spain, most of Italy, Greece, about the southern half of the Balkans, and northern China, Turkmenistan, and Korea and Japan. So this doesn't. It's been well documented that people in the past vastly exceeded modern humans physically and mentally. What does that mean? And it cites answers in Genesis. But this has no implication for the age of the actual planet itself. In fact, I don't think it'll even get to that until on. In fact, the entire history segment was just a waste of my time, and the entire biblical testimony section will also possibly be an equal waste of my time. I'm not hating on the Bible. I'm just thinking that based on what we currently see, when it gets to when this article gets to the biblical testimony section, it will also pull out a bunch of non sequiturs and verses that don't support a 6,000-year-old, a very young Earth. The moon's orbit has a very strong counterexample. The moon is receding from the Earth at a rate. This is probably from CMI. Oh wait, that's actually from Apollo laser, yada 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 yada. That means it cannot be more than 1.37 billion years old, much less than the often claimed 4.5 billion years. So this is CMI, I predicted correctly. And if you actually look at the understood, the convoluted equation that it cites, dang it, I can't find the equation. So it cites this convoluted equation. How do we know that this equation is not the right one? How do we know it's not a more simple one, like simply dividing the distance between the moon's distance from the sun and the moon's distance from the earth and the Roche limit by this rate, which actually allows it to be as old as like 9 or 10 billion years old. In fact, this assumes that the moon would start off touching the earth and so within the Roche limit, which would not be possible without yada yada yada. That would have prevented the Earth and the Moon being as they are today. Additionally, the Moon's orb is becoming increasingly and unexpectedly eccentric, suggesting a lack of long-term stability, which further proves I think this is based on current stability, not old stability, not full possible stability. So I guess that would probably just have something to do with when the moon became the moon. So I'll put it under a possible refutation. Spiral galaxies appear to be young, and only implausible proposals of the existence of dark matter can reconcile spirals with the belief in the old universe. They have no citation connected to this. The expansion of the universe is accelerating, something that would not occur if the Big Bang happened billions of years ago. The acceleration suggests that the Big Bang or creation was recent. Some insist that this hokey, unseen energy or dark matter to try to explain this acceleration. That's a note, not a citation. So 2 with no citation whatsoever. And also this accelerating. That means that the universe used to be expanding slower than it currently is. That wouldn't prove that the Earth is only 6,000 years old. The planetary orbits in the solar system, including Earth's, are unstable and unsustainable over the long. It's claimed by old Earth belief. And this other article is by I'll just stop it here.